Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A List, a little series I'm doing to just cover a bunch of broad topics that interest me. LIST stands for Life is Short because I always think, even in the grand scheme of things, if life is short, there's still so much time for us to talk about a wide variety of dumb or just interesting subjects. And for today's subject, we're going to be talking about technology use and how it is now, and just talking a bit about the proper ways to use it. Going into my experience with technology, I have a very interesting perspective on what it is and how I've gone through my life with it. Because for me, I never really had access to that much technology because I didn't, have the money to afford it. So I've had like an iPad when I was younger, and that was my first introduction to it. But with screen times and stuff like that, I could only use it a bit, and I played a bit of Minecraft like we all like to. But that was my real only experience with it. And then as I grew up, I got to having a laptop, and that was fun, and I learned how to properly use like actual desktop systems and stuff. But still, that was really only every once in a while thing, and it wasn't really incorporated with my childhood and into my early teens. And that was a really important factor for me because I still was just out there doing what kids did, playing with some Legos, going outside, doing all that fun stuff. And I didn't have technology as this big toy that I was really used to. And now comparing it to what kids do nowadays, it's really interesting to look at and see how instead of having those Legos or going outside, the first thing on their thing is watching YouTube, playing games, doing a bunch of stuff on technology. When I started to grow up more, I got my first phone. And this is where it got interesting because phones is at least how it is nowadays, where you really break into that, I would say, addictive technology aspect, and where you can really fall down the rabbit hole of being glued to screens. Now, we have all our opinions about how you should use technology, how you shouldn't, but I feel, for me, the best way that I did not get necessarily glued to screens 24/7 was that childhood I talked about, but then I got an iPhone 6S as my first phone. And if you know anything about old phones, you know you can barely do anything on them. And with that old phone, I was able to text, I was able to look at the weather, and do most basic phone stuff that phones have always been able to be used for, like flip phones, just quickly call somebody or text somebody. But because I had an iPhone 6, I couldn't do anything that started to get to that addictiveness nature. I couldn't open any social medias because I could try, but once I started scrolling, it just didn't feel good. And that limited me to just not even considering it as an option to use on my phone. So instead of using my phone for social media and stuff, I really just had it off to the side wherever I needed to text somebody or occasionally check the weather. Those were my only uses for it. Slowly throughout the years, instead of going to the phone for technology use, I went to more computers like that laptop I mentioned, and eventually I got my own desktop for games. And for a while, it just stayed like that, where I would just do my regular stuff of playing around and doing random stuff, and then sometimes using technology as another toy. Then it got to the point where once you get into those teenage years and you actually have access to more technology, is when, for me, it got into that addictive phase. And it, I would still say, is in that phase, where now I use my desktop computer a lot, but I don't use my phone a lot. Because, like I said, my first phone was an iPhone 6, and that iPhone 6 stayed with me until only a couple months ago. And that iPhone was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because it was just a hand-me-down. And even though I wanted a modern phone, couldn't afford it, so all I got was that. And once I got it, it made me not get addicted to my phone. Because when I got a new phone a couple months ago, I was like, oh my gosh, all these modern features, huger screen, all this performance. I saw all of it and then decided, well, I don't really want to use it besides for like texting and checking the weather because that's all I was used to. And now when I'm pulling out my phone, those are really the two only things I use it for, and like the occasional game when I'm bored and sitting and waiting for something. And I'm really glad I was able to have that perspective with that old phone where it taught me how to use a phone without social media. And a lot of people nowadays are not taught like that, and they don't have the experience of what it can be like without social media. And I'm super glad for it. Now, the only social media I use a lot, I would say, is YouTube on my desktop. But I've always made sure to not go into the more addictive short form content, because especially with how social media has been and like how it's been on phones, short form content has really been that idea to get people really glued to their screens. I just have to say TikTok, and most of the people will know what I'm talking about with short form addicting content where you just keep on scrolling. For me, what I did is I started watching a bunch of YouTube. And then once I saw that I was just watching a bunch of YouTube and not necessarily wasting my time, because I always like to watch more sciencey videos and longer topics about random things that interested me. But I saw that I was using it a lot. So I decided, let's just start blocking the things that make me use it. There is a great extension on Google Chrome called Unhook, which basically can change the YouTube homepage a bunch. Like, for instance, I have shorts blocked all the time because I noticed I started watching shorts a lot more, and I didn't really like how that was because I saw how addicting short form content can be in really getting glued to my screen. And then also with that same Google extension, you're able to block the YouTube homepage. So I'll have it unblocked for a bit, select a couple videos, then block it. And then the only videos I have access that I can actually click on and watch are the ones I already have open. And that really helped me just learn how to properly use technology and try and get away from social media. Because even though some people like to say YouTube isn't a social media, I know that's something I do a lot, it unfortunately still considered kind of one. You're not necessarily interacting a bunch if you don't use the social features, but it still is having that idea of watching content and consuming it. But once I started to learn how to properly use these social medias, really only YouTube, I started focusing on other stuff like video games and getting really into those. And once I was able to get into this thing where, yes, I'm still watching YouTube and consuming content, but I'm consuming content that is either educational or just intriguing me and not just me sitting there brain rotted just looking at my screen or playing some random games I find fun. I found that balance of technology really just made me happy. And it made me sad to see all these people who are sitting there on their phones, scrolling social media, just absolutely into the social media fully and having a hard time to quit. And it made me realize just how lucky I was from getting a crappy hand-me-down phone that it made me realize, oh, I don't need social media. So then I grew up without social media. And I feel like just from all of this and my perspective, it was so enlightening. I felt like I just wanted to share it and be like, you all can get rid of social media. It is something in our lives that everybody uses now, and not using it almost feels like uncool or just plain wrong because everybody else is using it, so why not you use it? It's the common human mindset of, if a bunch of people are doing it, don't you want to do it so you fit in? And that's been the common thing with social media. But with how life is still structured, there's so many things you're still able to do without social media or even a phone. Is it healthy to have a phone and watch social media? There's nothing inherently wrong about it. It's just once you start using it improperly and not realizing what you're actually doing is when it starts to get harmful or just plain annoying for your own mental being. I really hope that eventually social media can die down in the phase of people just trying to farm for engagement, because at least with how that is affecting the platforms provided, it is making so many people just suffer just being basically addicted to this content. And I really want more people to just take a step back from social media and only use it every once in a while, or just properly manage it day by day. I feel like really just eliminating a phone, certain aspects of a phone, is something great for everybody nowadays. with how phones are and how having a basically powerful computer compared to what computers were back in the day, a portable computer in your pocket, it's insane. And I feel that eliminating some of the aspects of it can make you go back into the mindset of just being more aware of the world and realizing all these different kind of opportunities you have, like literally going outside. It's the common advice people say, but still just taking a walk outside without your phone or any technology, taking in the atmosphere, it's truly calming. I feel like the best way to start is limiting yourself from social media, not just deleting the app and then installing it a week later. That's the common thing a lot of people do with social media, and that's where I would say most fail when they try and stop using it. The best way is to just see what kind of content you're consuming. Maybe if you're like, all right, I still want to consume content, get updates of news, and watch stuff that I'm interested in, maybe move platforms. For me, I would say anybody just switching from TikTok to long-form YouTube is a great start to be able to still consume content you want to, and from maybe the same creators, but it's slightly different enough where you're able to get your engagement different, and maybe just watching a couple of long-form videos calling, that hour session of watching a couple 10-minute videos was pretty nice, but I'm going to go do something else on the computer, is way better than sitting there for 6 hours scrolling on TikTok. That is at least how my perspective is on technology use and ways to maybe make it better. Of course, my ways aren't scientifically proven or anything. They're just random thoughts I've had from having such limited technology in my life. But that is another strategy of just limiting the technology. And if you don't want to have to go out and buy an old phone to limit yourself, just start by treating your phone like you don't have the app store and delete a couple apps or limiting those apps. I know for me, I don't have any social media downloaded on my new phone, even though I can easily get it. And that has helped me stay by the texting and weather phenomenon I have on my phone. And that's the best way to put it. But I hope anything I've said has been a bit insightful or maybe made you think a bit. But that will be all for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.